The year is 1349 and a ship just arrived in Bergen. The crew on the ship is found dead, and the only living creatures on the boat was the rats, which had a disease which was ready to completely change Norway's history. The Black Death swept across Europe like a wildfire, and Norway wasn't spared. It's several theories on how the Black Death came to Norway, but most historians think it came to Norway when the mentioned ship arrived in Bergen in 1349. Norway was especially hit by the plague. The priest was the first to die, since they traveled a lot and also visited victims of the plague. We know today that the plague came from the fleas on the rat's body, but people didn't know about this on that time. Some simply thought that this was a punishment from God, and others began to believe that a fictional old woman called Pesta spread the plague. She had two tools with her, a broom and a rake. When she visited a farm and she used the broom, everyone on the farm died. When she used a rake, some people on the farm will survive. The plague remained in Norway until 1350. During the time the plague was in Norway, the plague killed half of the population, and many farms was left empty. The priest was the only people in Norway which could write, and since they was especially targeted by the plague, the Norwegian writing system was lost. Norway left the union with Sweden in 1364, but Norway was far from powerful. Norway became a part of Denmark when Norway's king married Margaret of Denmark. Queen Margaret wanted to counter the influence of the Hanseatic League and created the Kalmar Union with Sweden in 1397. She appointed his nephew Erik of Pomerania to be the new king of Denmark, Norway and Sweden. The Kalmar Union became a big power in Europe, but the union was almost entirely controlled by Denmark. Sweden's power within the union grew as the years went by, and the tension between Sweden and Denmark became bigger and bigger. When Erik died in 1459, both Denmark and Sweden had chosen a candidate for the throne. Denmark's candidate, Christopher of Bavaria, became the new king. He died in 1448, and Christian I became the new king. Christian I died in 1481, and Hans became the new king. Hans died in 1513, and Christian II became the new king. The Swedish nobles refused Christian as king, and a war broke out between Sweden and Denmark. Christian won the war and invited the Swedish nobles to Stockholm in 1521 and killed 90 of them. This event is known as the Stockholm Bloodbath. This sparked a rebellion led by the noble Gustav Vasa. The rebellion was successful, and the Kalmar Union was split into Denmark and Sweden. Norway remained under Denmark, and the Norwegian Council of Nobles was heavily influenced by Denmark, which replaced many Norwegian nobles with Danish nobles within the council. Christian was taken prisoner by his uncle Frederick, which became the new king of Denmark. Martin Luther began to change the religious landscape in Europe. His teachings was inspired just by the Bible itself, and not on the Pope and the Church's traditions. These ideas began to be popular in Europe, and this wasn't an exception in Scandinavia. Sweden introduced the Reformation in 1527, and Denmark followed suit. When Frederick died, a civil war broke out in Denmark, which Frederick's son, Christian III, won. Christian introduced the Lutheran Church in Norway and appointed many Danish Lutheran priests. The Catholic Church was forbidden, and the people which practiced the Catholic faith became suppressed by Denmark and also arrested. The Norwegian Council of Nobles was abolished in 1537, and Norway came under direct Danish rule. Christian died in 1559, and his son Frederick II became the new king of Denmark. He died in 1588, and his son Christian IV became the new king of Denmark. Sweden's power was on the rise, and they wanted to control the Norwegian coast. Christian began to fear an invasion from Sweden and declared war on them in 1611. His goal was to conquer Sweden and make it a part of Denmark, but he failed. The war ended in 1613, but Sweden failed to complete their goal to control the Norwegian coast. A Norwegian city named Oslo burned to the ground in 1624, and Christian ordered a new city to be built upon the ruins of Oslo and named the city Christiania. This city became the most important city in Norway. He founded several other cities in Norway as well, among others the city Kristiansand in 1641. Sweden declared war on Denmark in 1645, and Sweden won the war. Denmark was forced to give up Jämtia, Härdialia, and Holland. Christian died in 1648, and his son Frederick III became the new king of Denmark. Sweden fought a war against Poland during the 1650s. Frederick saw an opportunity to get revenge on Sweden and declared war on them. It was Sweden which was on the offense in this war, and they marched into Denmark in 1657. In 1658, Denmark was forced to surrender. Denmark was forced to give Skåne, Bohuslän, and Trondheimslen to Sweden. Trondheimslen was returned to Denmark in 1660. The Danish kings had always governed the country together with the nobles, but the discontent with the nobles grew, much because of their lack of contribution to the wars against Sweden. Frederick removed the nobles from power in 1660 with the support from the people and made the country to an absolute monarchy. Frederick died in 1670, and his son Christian V became the new king of Denmark. Christian died in 1699, and his son Frederick IV became the new king of Denmark. Sweden's power was on an all-time high. They controlled land all the way to Livonia. Not everyone was happy with Sweden, and especially Denmark waited for an opportunity to crush Sweden, and a new opportunity began to rise on the horizon. Peter the Great, the Tsar of Russia, loved the West, and because he wanted to increase the trade with the West, he wanted to have access to the Baltic Sea. Denmark, Russia, Poland, and the German country of Saxon formed an alliance. Denmark's goal in the war was to take back Jämtia, Härdialia, and Bohuslän from Sweden. Denmark was defeated by Sweden and forced to surrender. Denmark rejoined the war in 1709, but this also ended in failure. Sweden tried to invade Norway both in 1716 and 1718, and both invasions failed. The Northern War ended in 1721, and Sweden was forced to give up Livonia, Estland, and some parts of Finland. Denmark was, however, not one of the victors in the war. Frederick died in 1730, and his son Christian VI became the new king of Denmark. Christian died in 1746, and his son Frederick V became the new king of Denmark. Frederick died in 1766, and his son Christian VII became the new king of Denmark. The French Revolution began in 1789, and King Louis of France was deposed as king in 1792. Napoleon took power in France in 1799. The Napoleonic Wars began in 1800. Denmark didn't join any side and became neutral. Napoleon was on the brink of victory in 1807. Great Britain, Napoli, and Sweden was now the only countries which fought against Napoleon. The British offered Denmark to join their side in exchange for Denmark to hand over all of their merchant ships. Great Britain did also fear that Denmark would join Napoleon. Denmark refused the offer. Great Britain was pissed off and attacked Copenhagen and confiscated all of their merchant ships. Christian became furious and joined the war on the French side. Christian died in January 1808, and his son Frederick VI became the new king of Denmark. Denmark, France, and Russia attacked Sweden from different directions. Russia began to invade Finland, and Denmark invaded from the south. France and Denmark's invasion of Sweden was not very successful. The Norwegian navy was too weak to be used. Sweden invaded Norway in April 1808, but they was only able to take the eastern part of Norway. The Norwegian army managed to push the Swedish army out of Norway. The Norwegians had earned a lot of money from the trade with the British, but since Norway was part of Denmark and Denmark had joined Napoleon in the war, Britain blocked Norway from foreign trade. The blockade led to unemployment, hunger, and a bad economy. After the loss of Finland, a rebellion was staged against Gustav Adolf, and Gustav Adolf was deposed. The deposition of Gustav Adolf could have united the whole of Scandinavia, but when Frederick was offered the Swedish throne, he refused it. Karl became the new king of Sweden. Sweden pulled out of the war in December 1809 and joined France in November 1810. Sweden pulled out of the war in April 1812 and became neutral. Tensions between France and Russia began to grow, and Napoleon declared war on Russia in June 1812. He sent an army of 700,000 men to invade Russia, but the invasion became a disaster and the war turned against Napoleon. Great Britain offered Norway to Sweden if they joined them in the war. Sweden accepted the offer and joined Great Britain's side in March 1813. Denmark was now the only country which was allied with Napoleon. Napoleon was defeated in March 1814 and Norway was handed over to Sweden. Some Norwegians was happy with the fact that they now was free from Danish rule, but other Norwegians wasn't happy to be treated like a gift by foreign powers, and a group of 112 men decided to meet in a Norwegian village called Eidsvoll.